camera there from our downtown camera. Looks like we might need the windshield wipers that come with those automated cameras downtown to clear things out. All right, having a little bit of fun here with you on this Monday afternoon as we get started. A number of different things we're watching for you right here at 12:30 on the Wisconsin Live Desk. First and foremost, a live look at the different feeds from what was supposed to be a launch of an Atlas V rocket down in Cape Canaveral, Florida. This was a United Launch Alliance project that had postponed what was supposed to be a second batch of satellites from Amazon's Project Kuiper. It's supposed to be getting broadband internet connection to different parts of the country, different parts of the world, and they were supposed to launch a second batch of these satellites from Cape Canaveral on this Monday afternoon. It was supposed to happen just moments ago, 1:25 local time. Of course, here in Central Time Zone would have been just about 5 minutes ago or so. It was postponed, though, because of an engineering observation, they say, an elevated purge temperature within the booster engine. I am not a rocket scientist, so I don't know exactly what that means, but sounds like something they did not want. Didn't want to see how that would play out from the launch pad there in Cape Canaveral. So instead, the new Atlas V rocket will not launch today. So far, a new launch time has not been announced. They're going through evaluations of the rocket to try to assess why they got that elevated purge temperature within a booster engine. So we will not be watching the launch live here on the Wisconsin Live Desk, but we do get to see some of the images from NASA down there at Cape Canaveral, the Kennedy Space Center. Something else that I'm certainly found quite fascinating to watch, this is a live look as we get ready for the G7 meeting. This is a G7 summit taking place in Kanaskas County, Canada, which is in Alberta. It's kind of the footsteps to Banff National Park, which I personally had a trip to a few years ago. It's absolutely stunning part of the world. Stunningly beautiful, these sharp, jagged mountains all over the place, and we're getting a number of different feeds from that part of Canada. Of course, the meeting itself, very high stakes, as President Donald Trump is there, has already met with Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney, as well as other members of the G7, this group of some of the biggest economies in the world, including Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom, the European Union also involved in this. Of course, this will be much discussion about some of the different wars going on right now, the wars in the Middle East and the ongoing strikes back and forth between Israel and Iran, which started at the end of last week and have continued over the weekend. And of course, the war in Ukraine with Russia's invasion there a few years ago still playing out, and the difference in support from the U.S. under President Donald Trump in his second term versus what the Europeans are trying to supply and push for in Ukraine. So two wars certainly chief of mind, as is the so-called trade war, started with all of the tariffs that the Trump administration enacted, many of them against trading allies, including members of the G7. These will be continued discussions. That's what President Trump says he is most focused on trade at this G7 summit. Now, some of the things that have happened already, I'm just going back through some of the updates here from the Associated Press, covering things as the welcome ceremony is taking place today for this G7 summit in the Canadian Rocky Mountains. But some of the other things that have come from this already. Canada's leader, Mark Carney, formally opened the Group of Seven summit by telling the fellow leaders from around the world, some of the most powerful nations in the globe, they are meeting at, quote, one of those turning points in history. Carney said the world is more divided and dangerous than during the past summits and other hinge moments, citing some of the gatherings after the fall of the Berlin Wall or the 9/11 terrorist attacks of 2001. Leaders of the United States, Germany, France, Japan, the United Kingdom, and Italy all seated before him there. Carney said the world looks to this table for leadership and predicted that they would have frank discussions over the two-day summit there in Kanaskas, Canada, in Alberta, that they would not always agree, but he said what they do and what they agree on will make a difference for their citizens and the citizens of the world in general. Apparently, in a more lighter moment before the welcome ceremony began, they were posing for photos with the president telling Mark Carney the setting that Carney had chosen for this G7 summit was, quote, beautiful. And yes, again, you're there in the Canadian Rockies, just some absolutely stunning images coming out of that part of Canada as well. Some other things, a Canadian tribal leader was tasked with greeting some of the world heads of state arriving for the G7. He said he considered leaving before President Donald Trump arrived, appalled by the U.S. president having caused much pain and suffering in the world. Instead, this tribal leader from Canada, Stephen Crowchild, said he prayed to his creator, consulted with his people's leadership, and opted to stay on the tarmac in Calgary, where he spoke at length yesterday with President Trump when he arrived in Canada, saying it was really intense to say the least. That's what he told the Associated Press today, and saying that he almost didn't stay. He was filled with rage, considering that visibility is key and diplomacy is important, that there were no Indigenous representation at the time. That's why he decided to remain. Now, when I speak about some of the other possible topics of discussion, of course, and I mentioned those different wars around the world, one of the other things to come of that side of things for the U.S. already is a decision that the U.S. military has made to move tanker aircraft to the Middle East. That's to give additional options for defense of U.S. bases and personnel in the Middle East because of the ongoing missile attacks between Iran and Israel, which continued. Different operations against Tehran from Israel and different strikes into Israel from Iran. These U.S. refueling tankers are vital to support any major U.S. air operation. They'd be able to help with either evacuations or potential strikes by U.S. fighter jets. So the U.S. Air Force deciding to move a pair of refueling tankers to the Middle East in response to some of the tensions, some of the high stakes across the other side of the world. So there we go. That's what we're tracking for you so far on this Monday afternoon. It is the Wisconsin Live Desk, but following the news from around the world and certainly here in North America and the Middle East prominent as well. One of the other things that we are also awaiting, of course, the news from over the weekend here in the Midwest was the shooting that happened in Minnesota. Someone with Wisconsin ties shooting and killing a former Speaker of the House in Minnesota along with her husband, and then shooting and injuring two other people, including another a Minnesota politician, both of those from the Democratic Party in Minnesota. We are expecting that shooting suspect to appear in federal court at some point. We'll try to bring that for you as well with our reporting partners in Minneapolis. We're going to take a short break, though, here on the Wisconsin Live Desk and continue to check in with the news as it happens after this.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Hey, welcome back to the Wisconsin Live Desk. Carl Defenbaugh with you here on this Monday afternoon as we await some of the stories that our reporters locally are working on for you today. And we'll bring you those updates as they're in the middle of their reporting today. Some of the key issues affecting southeastern Wisconsin and the entire Midwest region. We want to get you some of the news from around the world as well. And I mentioned just before we went to break there, of course, the ongoing war in the Middle East now escalating with strikes between Israel and Iran. There were preemptive strikes from Israel against Iran's nuclear program, as well as killing the top leader of Iran's Revolutionary Guard last week. That led to a response with missile strikes from Iran into Israel and deaths there, despite the strength of Israel's Iron Dome missile defense system. The different strikes have continued, and there's more serious news to tell you about here on this Monday. Early Monday morning, local time, Iranian missiles hit an oil refinery in the northern Israeli city of Haifa. That was for the second night in a row, and a fire and rescue service officials there now say that strike killed 3 different workers at that oil refinery, including igniting a significant fire damaging the building there as well. Workers were sheltering. The building had a safe room when the impact caused a stairwell to collapse. That trapped them inside, and firefighters tried to put out the fire and rescue those people, but it was too late. At least 3 killed in that. One other thing that we are following for you as well, again, the strikes going back and forth. According to Iran, an Israeli strike on a state TV station in Iran has killed journalists. The spokesperson for the Iranian foreign minister condemned an Israeli strike on Iran's state TV broadcaster, calling the international community to demand justice, calling it a war crime, in fact, a wicked act of a war crime. After the strike, the Israeli military actually released a statement saying it struck a communication center being used for military purposes by the Iranian armed forces, though it was not entirely clear if that was referring strictly to the state TV building. We know Israeli strikes have hit a number of other places, including in the war in Gaza. Israel has hit hospitals, UN facilities, and schools, and accused Palestinian militants of operating out of those locations in Gaza. Now, the Israeli defense minister has said that it takes credit for hitting the Iranian TV station as well. As I'm just now realizing, apologies for this, yes, as I try to bring you some serious information, an important thing, did not have my microphone clipped. That is a little bit embarrassing, but that's what we do. So, going to do this on the fly on the Wisconsin Live Desk, and wouldn't you know it, just like that, we are back up and running. Hey, it happens to the best of us. Okay, some of the other news that I want to bring you as well. Let's get you back to this planned launch of Atlas V rocket, which unfortunately was delayed in Florida. It was a United Launch Alliance had postponed the Atlas V launch. It was supposed to bring a second batch of Project Kuiper satellites from Cape Canaveral into low orbit from Florida today. The company, though, made the announcement just before 1 o'clock local time, so just before noon here in the Midwest. The launch was supposed to happen about 25 minutes later, but the delay was due to an elevated purge temperature within a booster engine, so that's why it was not initially launched there. Still waiting on a new launch time for this latest efforts here from the United Launch Alliance. Project Kuiper, interesting. This is actually from Amazon. So yes, the same place that's delivering your packages is also trying to deliver some satellites to low Earth orbit, trying to create a low Earth orbit satellite broadband network. The goal to provide fast, reliable internet to people around the world, including those in unserved and underserved communities. Eventually, they hope to have basically like a mini constellation, 3,200 or so of these LEO satellites, low Earth orbit satellites. They did successfully launch the first batch of internet satellites, 27 of them, April 28th, but then today's launch was supposed to be the second batch of satellites, had to be postponed, at least for now, because of engineering observation, they term it, an elevated purge temperature within the booster engine. The team's going to evaluate some of that and then come up with, hopefully, a new launch date and time following up from that. But we will not be watching a launch from Cape Canaveral, unfortunately, today with that Atlas V rocket, quite a powerful rocket planned to launch Amazon's Kuiper satellites. Won't happen today. All right, it's coming up on 12:45 or so here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. Carl Deffenbaugh with you here at 12:45, exactly the quarter-hour mark, as we get you ready for the rest of your Monday afternoon. I mentioned it before, but we'll hit it again. The G7 summit in Canada is underway. We have had the welcome ceremony already with Canada's Mark Carney welcoming the different world leaders to his country. This is in the Kanaskas country of Canada. It's beautiful, right on the foothills of the Canadian Rockies, right outside of Banff. It's outside of, in between Calgary and Banff, right as you get into the mountains. Absolutely stunning part of the country, and certainly quite a setting and backdrop for these world leaders to discuss a number of things. The war in the Middle East, as I mentioned, with Israel and Iran, the war in Ukraine after Russia's invasion years ago, the war continuing at this point, and the trade war, not necessarily as damaging when it comes to lives lost, but certainly important for all these different world economies, debating the back and forth as President Donald Trump had enacted different tariffs against some of these countries, some close American allies, and then the back and forth as he tries to negotiate different tariff and trade deals with countries around the world. So that's kind of what we're watching for on this Monday afternoon. Had to remember for a second there. It is the Wisconsin Live Desk, and why don't we take another break here, try to see what we find for you on the other side on the Wisconsin Live Desk. Thanks for watching on Fox Local and Fox 6's Milwaukee YouTube channel.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Good afternoon, Carl Deffenbaugh back with you here. The Wisconsin Live Desk rolls along, 12:49 here on your Monday afternoon. I told you a little bit before we went to break there about the recent strikes from Israeli forces in Iran. This has been a back and forth since a preemptive strike by Israel last week. The latest today kind of takes a war of words and turns it into a war surrounding words, as the Israeli defense minister has taken credit for a strike of an Iranian TV station, and this is an Iranian state TV station The statement from the defense minister said, quote, "The Iranian regime's propaganda and incitement broadcasting authority was attacked by the IDF," that's Israeli Defense Forces, "after a widespread evacuation of the area's residents. We will strike the Iranian dictator everywhere," end quote. That was from the statement. Now, human rights groups say deliberately targeting journalists, whether or not they work for state TV, that is a war crime. And in fact, an Iranian news anchor came back on air from another studio soon after this strike. He had actually been rushed off camera when Israel hit the state-run TV station. He spoke with another anchor and said bodies of reporters were at the site of the initial broadcast, images showing smoke and flames in the sky after Israel says it has hit a state TV broadcast center, a news station, TV station in Iran. So that is what is happening right now across the Middle East. Certainly another escalation to the ongoing strikes in the war between Iran and Israel started with Israel's preemptive attacks against different nuclear facilities, members of the military, and scientists in Iran. And Iran is also retaliating as well with continued strikes into Israel. One of the notes kind of tying together the two different big stories we're following internationally for you here on this Monday, the G7 summit, world leaders meeting in Canada right now, and something to come out of that related to the ongoing action in the Middle East. The British Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, a spokesman for him, told reporters off to the side of the G7 summit here today already that significant destabilization in the region is in nobody's interest. Speaking about this Middle Eastern conflict, that's certainly a dominant issue at the G7 summit. The spokesman for the Prime Minister went on to say, quote, "This summit is an opportunity to try and press for de-escalation, and that is the priority, certainly for the Prime Minister," speaking about Britain's Prime Minister Keir Starmer, and I believe for other world leaders too. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, though, has said that his country's ongoing strikes on Iran could result in the Iranian government's being overthrown. In fact, back on Friday, he urged the people of Iran to rise up against their leaders. So we continue to watch the fallout overseas, and we'll tell you what else we learn from this meeting of world leaders in Canada happening right now. Now, some of the other things that we're tracking, President Donald Trump, meanwhile, says at the G7 summit, he is focused on trade. He said a trade deal, let me get this for you, just moved away a little bit. A trade deal between the U.S. and Canada is achievable, although he and Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney approach it differently. Trump says he has a tariff concept because he's a tariff person, while he said that Carney has a more complex idea, but very good. So trade between these North American neighbors, certainly a chief topic, and the president says he is working on trade specifically while visiting Canada early this week for the G7 in Kanaskus, this region outside of Calgary, right as you get into the Canadian Rockies there, actually as you approach Banff. We will continue to follow things for you here around the world and also closer to home, as let's see what we can show you here on this Monday afternoon. How about a shot of downtown Milwaukee? Looking all right. It's a bit cloudy out there, but man, is it hot already too. It is currently 80 degrees in Milwaukee. We'll pop up our friends in the weather office, lovely graphic there to give you a sense. Just a little bit of a breeze from the west at 8 miles per hour, but 80 degrees already. Plenty of clouds out there, but it's starting to feel like summer ahead of what will be a very big week here in the city of Milwaukee. Of course, we have a Summerfest starting this Thursday. Now, this year, that coincides exactly with Juneteenth, the celebration, the formal celebration of when the last U.S. slaves were finally freed by Union troops in Galveston, Texas, years after the Emancipation Proclamation, but at the end of the Civil War. That is why Juneteenth is celebrated each and every year. Recently became a federal holiday, and we are tracking that for you here in the city of Milwaukee. So on Thursday morning, we'll have the Juneteenth parade, a number of different activities planned throughout the day. Fox 6 will happily be a part of that parade this Thursday morning as well. And then we turn it over to the big gig because it's also opening day of Summerfest, and we will also be down along the lakefront there at the festival grounds collecting food as we do each and every year for Stomp Out Hunger. It's a great way to get into the big gig for free on opening day, and coverage of all of the fun fun. There's a whole tie-in between the Juneteenth leaders here in Milwaukee and Summerfest. So there's a great lineup of music for you on that opening night, as well as all the rest that you can expect over the first weekend of a Summerfest, the first of 3, as they've stuck with that 3-weekend format here after making the switch a few years ago coming out of the pandemic. So just a few days away, 3 days away to be exact. It's going to be a very busy Thursday here in Milwaukee with both Juneteenth celebrations, the parade in the morning, and Summerfest getting underway as well. Farther to our west in Minnesota, we are also awaiting the latest from leaders there after a man is accused of killing a Minnesota lawmaker, wounding another one, killing another person, the spouse of that Minnesota lawmaker, and injuring the spouse of that injured lawmaker as well. The man, Vance Belter, has ties to southeastern Wisconsin. He received degrees, including a doctorate from Cardinal Stritch University. That was the school that went under back in 2023, but it was a well-established university here in the Milwaukee area until recently. Vance Belter is the man accused of shooting 4 different people, killing 2 of them in what is believed to be a political attack. Federal prosecutors say that he intended to inflict more carnage against those on a hit list, he said. Dozens of names of different politicians and people in Minnesota, certainly where these attacks took place, but also in Wisconsin, other states in the Midwest as well. And he is expected to appear in federal court at some point today. So we will try to get you that when it happens. No exaggeration to say his crimes are the stuff of nightmares, and that came from the U.S. Attorney Joseph Thompson at a press conference on Saturday. One of the other lawmakers that was targeted was actually on vacation, and the suspect left another house right after police arrived. So this could have been worse, but still 2 people shot and killed. He was accused of posing as an officer and fatally shooting the former Democratic House Speaker Melissa Hortman along with her husband Mark in their home early Saturday in a northern Minneapolis suburb. And they say that Belter also shot Senator John Hoffman, another Democrat, along with his wife Yvette, who lived just a few miles away. Those 2 are injured but expected to recover, while the first 2, Melissa Hortman, her husband Mark, died in that shooting. As charges come in, we'll try to bring you that from Minneapolis throughout the Wisconsin Live Desk. That's what we're waiting for right now. All right, we're going to take another break here as we approach the 1 o'clock hour on the Wisconsin Live Desk. Try to get you some other news of the day locally as well with our team of reporters out and about around southeastern Wisconsin for you. We'll get you their reports in just a little bit here on the Live Desk.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Good afternoon, Carl Deffenbaugh back with you here, 1 o'clock as we keep it rolling on the Wisconsin Live Desk. Hey, how about this? Pretty cool shot of a giant airplane right now. I'm not actually sure what this feed is coming from, but clearly a Korean airplane on a tarmac somewhere, and it's a double-decker. So I don't know. That was coming by. I thought it was kind of cool. Let's take it. Not sure if that's someone arriving for parts of the G7 discussions or what exactly this is, but that is a giant airplane live here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. Yeah, with the Canadian flag, the Korean flag. I believe this is an arrival for the G7 event involving a number of countries, including the world's top economies, all meeting in Kanaskas right now, just in the foothills of the Canadian Rockies, a beautiful part of the country. President Trump has already arrived as well. And a giant plane from Korea, bearing both the Korean and Canadian flags there, coming out of the top on the tarmac as well. All right, a little bit of fun for you here on this Monday afternoon. Of course, many serious discussions to be had at that summit. Let's give you another live look downtown Milwaukee, and how about we get you the most Wisconsin story of the day. It is, no joke people, Quick Trip Day here in the great state of Wisconsin. So the reason for that, Governor Tony Evers declared today, Monday, June 16th, Quick Trip Day in the state of Wisconsin, an official proclamation from the governor. So why this day? Well, it was actually back on June 16th, 1965, that the very first Quick Trip opened. That was in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, and makes today Quick Trip's 60th birthday, so to speak, 60th anniversary. The CEO and president of Quick Trip released a statement saying, quote, "We are truly honored to have Quick Trip Day officially recognized by Governor Evers. This proclamation is a reflection of the incredible work our coworkers do each and every day to serve our guests and communities. We're proud to call Wisconsin home and even prouder to be part of so many lives across this great state." There's one right up the road from us here at the FOX6 studios that gets, let's just say, lots of business from our photographers and other people out and about, refilling, stocking up, whether it's gas, food, and the like. Got to get some of the Glazers as well. All the good stuff on this Quick Trip Day. So we decided to have a little bit of fun. What is your favorite thing about Quick Trip? This is a poll you can check out right now, fox6now.com/poll. It just launched. That's why you're not seeing or just the even split 50-50 right now between the two results. But as the numbers come in, we'll try to check this for you as well. You can scan the QR code in the upper right of your screen, or also go to fox6now.com/poll if you want to weigh in. So here are your options. What is your favorite thing about Quick Trip? Is it the Glazers? Is it the hot food? They got plenty of that. Clean bathrooms? Yes, indeed. The bananas. I guess that really hits for some people, just like, you know, that perfect ripeness for their bananas. And then the coffee, or just everything. That seems to be what most people go with. But if you want to weigh in, scan the QR code or check out fox6now.com/poll for more of that. Hey, it's Quick Trip Day. We got to celebrate, right? All right, let's give you another live look as, yes, the flag of South Korea on that jet there and waving above it as well. That jumbo jet, along with the flag of Canada, has arrived here in Canada, in Alberta, for part of the G7 summit. Give you another sense of like what the backdrop is. President Donald Trump did tell the Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney the setting they chose for this summit is, quote, beautiful, and that's just one example why, as we get you another live feed from Canada right now. Right here in Kanaskas County, it's the place you pass through on the way from Calgary, driving up to Banff National Park, an absolutely stunning part of that country, and those foothills of the Canadian Rockies. Kind of jagged sawtooth peaks like the one that you're seeing there. If you ever get the chance to go, it is an absolute gem of a location. One of my favorite vacations I think I've ever taken. Of course, they are not here for a vacation today. The members from the Korean party there joining, along with members from other of the leading economies from around the world. Countries like, let me get you the updates again, Canada, of course, hosting, but the G7 also includes a number of other leaders taking part in this. The U.S., Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom, different countries, including the European Union, represented at these talks. It is all happening over these next couple days, the welcome ceremony and then the meetings, both the ones that happen with the whole group and certainly those kind of side conversations that happen as well between different world leaders, like UK's Prime Minister Keir Starmer is there, French President Emmanuel Macron, and others expected to discuss many things, including the war between Russia and Ukraine, certainly the conflict in the Middle East, which continues to escalate between Iran and Israel with strikes back and forth today, and we've detailed the serious nature of that, and the state of the global economy and how these different countries play into that, with President Donald Trump saying that is what he is most focused on at the G7 summit. He is focused on trade. All right, we're going to take another break. We're waiting on one of our reporters is going to join us hopefully relatively soon. It's an interesting story coming to you on this Monday afternoon. That would be with our Brett Lemoyne, hopefully joining us soon here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. But how often do you get to see a plane of that size? That is a massive, massive plane just arriving in Canada. It looked big from far away. It looks even bigger as you get closer to that camera shooting the arrival of this Korean plane in town for the G7. We'll take another short break here on the Wisconsin Live Desk, see what we find for you on the other side. Thanks a lot for watching.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Good afternoon, Carl Leffenbaugh back with you on the Wisconsin Live Desk. It is 1:09 as we roll right along on kind of a summer-like day. 79 degrees out there, 80 in downtown Milwaukee as we're getting the latest updates from the airport. But we're going to head out to Brookfield right now because our Brett Lemoyne is standing by with quite the interesting development out there. Renderings, Brett, for a new Brookfield public market. We know closer to our studios right now in Milwaukee, there's such a popular one that has been like a #1 tourist destination for so many people visiting the city of Milwaukee. Brookfield wants in on the public market craze. Tell us about this.
Yeah, absolutely, Carl. Good afternoon. We are at Brookfield Square Mall, and behind me is what used to be the site of Boston Store. Of course, that was torn down a couple of months ago. It had been vacant for a number of years, and now Visit Brookfield, the city of Brookfield, and developer Ergens have just announced, as of the end of last week, plans to redevelop this particular site. So here's what's taking place. They hope to put in place what they're calling the Brookfield Public Market. It would involve 12 merchant stalls and also have a retractable roof. Visit Brookfield would ultimately oversee this project and development, and they say that they really kind of envision this to be kind of a meeting space, a community gathering space. So not only are you going to have local vendors here selling all sorts of goods, food, handmade items, but you're also going to have kind of an educational space. So it was described to me as, kind of like cooking classes, flower arrangements, those kind of things that would help occupy this space. Also just going to have meeting space in general where people in Brookfield can come, have a coffee, meet up, that type of thing. So Ergens, the developer, is also planning to add a two-story medical office building here as well. So one of the questions that we had, Carl, and I'm sure you do too, is what does this mean for Brookfield Square Mall, right? I mean, it is still the largest occupant of this footprint out here in Brookfield. So we did try and find out and ask around at Brookfield Square, and unfortunately we didn't get anyone to talk to us yet. But here's something that I think is really interesting, Carl. We did we were mall walking today. My photographer Justin and I, we were mall walking. And there's roughly, we're going to say roughly 70 storefronts within the mall, okay? We're not counting anything in the food court, okay? But we're going to say roughly 70 storefronts in Brookfield Square. Guess how many are empty, Carl, out of 70?
I haven't been there recently, so that maybe speaks to the problem. But out of 70, can I say like half? Is it that? Is it 50% or so?
More. So there's out of 70, there's 40 storefronts that are completely empty or closing. We'll put an asterisk on that. There was one store that is going out of business currently, but we're counting that as being closed. So the mall itself is really hurting. It is not what it used to be. I mean, when I was growing up, when I was in high school and whatnot, I mean, we used to come down here almost every week. This was a destination mall. Not the case anymore. So it will be very interesting to see as this new development takes place, how that's going to impact the footprint of this particular location out here in Brookfield. Of course, there may not be a lot of people coming out to Brookfield Square Mall anymore, but they've developed this area quite a bit over the last decade or so, adding restaurants, Chick-fil-A, Uncle Julio's. There's quite a few restaurants that have been added. Lou Malinati's over here that have kind of helped to draw people back. But yeah, only time will tell what this all means for this development that is still a pretty traveled area. I mean, we're right off of 94. It is still a pretty heavily trafficked area. That's out here. But,
it is interesting, Brett. You say that this is where you and your friends would go. For me, I grew up in suburban Maryland, and people recognize my town because of the mall that they would go to because it was that much of a destination. And obviously, this has all changed with the shift to online commerce and all the like. Malls are not what they used to be as kind of this heyday meeting spot, the spot to go, especially for teenagers and whatnot. Why do they think that the public market concept that we've seen work effectively, but in smaller scale in some other parts of the city, certainly around the country, why do they think that can be a draw in a way that a food court or, as you mentioned, a mall with more than half vacancies right now is not, clearly?
Great question, Carl, and I asked that exact question to the Visit Milwaukee's CEO, Nancy Justman, just about a half hour ago, and she said the difference here is that this is going to be stuff that you can't find anywhere else, right? This is stuff that is here produced locally. You can't necessarily just go buy it online. This is food that could be, prepared right in front of you. Stuff that you can kind of pick out, just kind of similar to the Milwaukee Public Market. I think there is a smaller one in Mequon, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, actually pretty close.
I don't cross the border that often, Carl. So
the Waukesha County reporter isn't allowed to go cover Mequon.
I've got a bracelet on my ankle, and it beeps whenever I leave the county. No, but there are some draws here that they think will kind of differentiate. One of the neat things about the building that they're planning is a glass roof and have a retractable portion of the roof as well for the public market. So they can really kind of use this year round and make it feel very inviting and warm during the winter, but also in the summertime, like now, they could have it open up and you could be outdoors essentially, you know, in some of this space.
That's kind of interesting, and it certainly caught my attention when you first mentioned it. So I guess in their mind, that's not the cheapest option. So the cost of a retractable roof is worth it for kind of the all seasons experience versus having a strictly indoor part of the market and then like a patio or something like that to enjoy as we get here into the summer months. The retractable roof, in their opinion, is kind of worth that effort.
Yeah, they think so. They want this to be a destination in Brookfield. You know, they want this area to kind of once again be the spot in not only Brookfield, but in Waukesha County as a whole. So the site that we're talking about, the site behind me here, is about 2.1 acres. Just for perspective, it's a 16-acre footprint that Ergens has out here. So it's while it doesn't sound on paper when you hear those numbers, Carl, it is actually quite a big spot. Now, we said before, it's not a done deal. This is not something that is set to go here. Boots on the ground, shovels in the dirt. We're told June 24th, so next week, I believe that's next week, Tuesday, there is a meeting in Brookfield where we're going to learn a lot more from the developers about what their plans are, and then it will kind of sort of usher in the next phase of the project, which would be to kind of get the city on board. There should be some TIF funding that will help cover some of the costs out here as well. But if you think, Carl, too, about where this is located, right? So we're in the city of Brookfield here. If you just go down Blue Mound Road, to the other end of town, to the town of Brookfield, you know, that's where the Corners of Brookfield is currently. And that is kind of now become one of the areas that has been ripe for redevelopment, and there's a lot of stuff that's going on there. So Visit Brookfield says they really kind of want these two developments to bookend each other, to complement each other, and ultimately, you know, drive customers, drive visitors from all over.
It is pretty wild, even just watching behind you there, Brett, thinking about driving by there, used to seeing a big box store, an anchor of this kind of old style of mall, just gone, and trying to look for those new opportunities there. Now that, if I'm not familiar, or if I'm not mistaken here, Brookfield Square, on the other side, they still have the movie theater, they still have, is it Whirly Ball down there, a convention center?
Whirly Ball.
Is it kind of like a reimagining overall of like, okay, it's not the traditional mall format, but we can piece together enough stuff that people want to go to, that it can kind of be a rising tide lifts all boats, but you have to think about what boats they want in 2025?
Yeah. So, you know, as retail here has gone down, the restaurants in the area have kind of risen. And what's interesting, and I'm glad that you mentioned that, is that a lot of the restaurants that are here have been kind of tacked on, right? Kind of like, almost like that Whirly Ball, the movie tavern. They're kind of tacked on to what was the existing footprint of Brookfield Square, or where Sears used to be. Back, you know, a number of years ago. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see what shape all of this takes once the public market, if the public market materializes and occupies this space. What is that going to mean for everything just behind it here with Brookfield Square Mall, all of the shops that are still there, or a few of the shops that are still there, we should say, and then also some of these restaurants that have popped up and have been relatively successful. I mean, for the most part, from just based on my own memory in general, the restaurants that have been added here have been successful in the sense that they haven't closed, right? There aren't any empty restaurant spaces that are out here. But overall, the vision for this space should kind of materialize a little bit more next week. Again, there's also a two-story medical office building that is proposed for this site as well. So it'll be interesting to see what the future holds for the site of Brookfield Square Mall.
We're going to have to do, Brett, excuse me here, a redo of mall rats, and we'll call it public market rats for 2025, or once this eventually were to be built out there in Brookfield. A changing of the guard, changing of the times for what people want. But honestly, it sounds pretty interesting. The Milwaukee public market has recently been voted the #1 public market in the entire country a couple years in a row. So clearly there's a desire to visit, a desire for that kind of place, and maybe Brookfield can get their own kind of slice of the pie out there. Interesting. All right, we'll look for your reporting later today here on Fox Local and on our different newscasts. Brett, thank you very much. You're on the mall beat for us today.
All right, thanks, Carl.
It is really interesting how all of that has changed, of course, over the generations, over decades, probably more so even just year by year. The stores that were staples of so many childhoods are not there anymore. And how do you fit that space to a new generation and what people want in terms of their shopping and their economy? So as is always the case here on the Wisconsin Live Desk, the different reporters that we have locally throughout southeastern Wisconsin, if you're intrigued, if you want to hear more from the folks that visit Brookfield and kind of their plans, get to see some of the ideas that they have for that possible Brookfield public market, make sure you check back in later today for Brett Lemoyne's full story and reports from that space. It's a lot of potential. We'll see what ends up coming of it later down the road. A couple other things I wanted to make sure we bring you back to, because we are monitoring this for you on this Monday afternoon. Another just gorgeous shot from Canada right now as President Trump and other world leaders meet at the G7 summit. These are the Canadian Rockies in the Kanaskas County area west of Calgary in Alberta, the site for these different world leaders all arriving today. And then this just happened, certainly a topic for the G7 summit and for others around the world, the ongoing strikes between Israel and Iran. And this is the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, who just stepped to a podium recently. Let's listen in. Some of his questioning and answers, I believe, were in Hebrew, so difficult for our audience to understand, but let's see what we have now.
ביום הרביעי, ותראו מה שחוללנו. ואני חושב שיש לנו אורך רוח ואורך נשימה ועוצמה של רוח שמבטיחים שאנחנו נוכל לעמוד בכל אתגר. אני לא הולך לתת שוב לוחות זמנים, אבל אני מעריך שזה יהיה, שנגיע למטרות. שאלת שאלה שנייה, בבקשה.
אתמול אמרת שאתה מזהה פרצה במשא ומתן, גם ראש המל"ל צחי הנגבי אמר את זה היום בגל"צ, שאנחנו רואים תזוזה אצל חמאס מאז שהחלה המתקפה באיראן. אתה יכול קצת...
And while the questioning continues, of course, in, I believe, Hebrew there, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, we do have a few updates on what he has shared in this briefing already. He says that Israeli strikes have set Iran's nuclear program back a, quote, very, very long time. And that was, of course, the goal for the preemptive attacks from Israel that started all of this last week. But the opposition continues in the response from Iran, with missiles now coming into Netanyahu's country and killing Israelis as well. Roughly 24 hours or so before the initial blistering launch on Iran, Israel's opposition was scheming to trying to bring down Netanyahu's operation and government. And now, after this, just days into the ongoing operation, the opposition has seemingly closed ranks behind that effort, suspending months of different criticism and politics in Israel against Netanyahu and his leadership, specifically his handling of the war in Gaza. So quite the about face for the different parties that have criticized Netanyahu openly over the handling of the war in Gaza, now seemingly having changed their political tone as well. Does question throughout the war for what has seemed to be at times politically motivated decision-making. The most recent, a preemptive strike on Iran's nuclear program that he says Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has set Iran's program back a, quote, very, very long time. Now, he did specifically say that Israel was not attempting to topple the Iranian government, but said he would not be surprised if that happened as a result of Israel's strikes, saying, quote, the regime is very weak. He also added that he is in daily contact with U.S. President Donald Trump, so that's an interesting note as well, as there's been a question back and forth of what the U.S. knew ahead of time, what they maybe had thwarted as well. There were sources saying that President Donald Trump had specifically said that Netanyahu should not launch missions trying to kill the Ayatollah, the leader of Iran, although Netanyahu has questioned the validity of those reporting. But Netanyahu says that he and President Donald Trump are in daily contact and that he believes the Iranian regime is, quote, very weak, specifically after these strikes. Now, some of the latest strikes, though, are causing outrage from human rights groups around the country, which say that Israel possibly could be charged with war crimes for a recent strike on a state television station in Iran, targeted by a strike just hours ago. The website for that station currently inaccessible, saying, quote, server is temporarily unavailable. But the results of that, there was a news anchor from Iran who went off air, rushing off camera when the Israeli strikes hit that Iranian TV station. He actually came back on from another studio soon after that and said that there were bodies of reporters at the site of the initial broadcast, with images showing smoke and flames in the sky. And Israel's defense minister has taken credit for that strike on what they say was the Iranian regime's propaganda and incitement through that broadcast authority. The Israeli defense minister saying, "We will strike the Iranian dictator everywhere," while at the same time, human rights groups say that deliberately targeting journalists, even ones that work for state-run broadcast services, would be considered a war crime. Remains to be seen what comes from that. We are getting you some of the other updates from the Prime Minister's briefing here. He also said, and again, I'm doing this because much of the answers and response has been in Hebrew, I believe, during this press conference, saying that the Israeli strikes have set back the regime in Iran and the nuclear program for a very, very long time. That is certainly top of the mind around the world, an escalation in the Middle East. The other big story here in America has been the seemingly politically motivated killing of 2 people in the Minneapolis area and the injuring of 2 others in 2 different shootings. A suspect is due in court today. That man is Vance Belter, a man who has ties to southeastern Wisconsin, apparently receiving degrees, including a doctorate from Cardinal Stritch University, working for Johnsonville Sausage at one point, according to his LinkedIn page, and many other connections between these 2 states. The deaths that happened were a fatal shooting of a former Democratic House Speaker, Melissa Hortman, along with her husband, Mark. That was early Saturday morning, and it came after authorities say that man, Vance Belter, also shot Democratic Senator John Hoffman and his wife, who lived just a few miles away. There may have been more targets, including a lawmaker who apparently was gone on vacation, not at home at the time. Otherwise, a terrible situation could have been even worse. That suspect is due in federal court today in Minnesota, and we're working with our reporting partners at the Fox station in Minneapolis to bring you more of that throughout the day today, as it happens, certainly here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. All right, we have to take another break for you here. It's approaching the 1:30 mark. Ben Handelman is going to take over the live desk for me after this. So today, why don't we leave you? We don't have a press conference to use as our cover for the swap. So instead, I'll leave you with this beautiful shot, again, of the Canadian Rocky Mountains as President Donald Trump and others, world leaders from the top economies around the world, are meeting in Canada. The welcome event for the G7 summit has happened already. We will check in with Ben Handelman after this for the other news happening in Wisconsin, across the Midwest, and around the world here on the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Ben Handelman here from the Wisconsin Live Desk. Okay, we're getting you set for another hour here. You're looking at beautiful Western Canada, home of the G7 summit. President Trump meeting with world leaders there. It's hosted by Mark Carney, the new prime minister there in Canada. This is really a beautiful part of the country. Ever been to Banff National Park there in Canada? This is near there, a stunning resort there. But world leaders are meeting there. Sometimes big news comes out of the G7. Sometimes they just meet and have a big photo op, and not a lot of things come out of it. But obviously with all the tariffs, a lot of eyes on this today. So we're looking live at this big meeting as the world leaders arrive there today. Just getting you reset here from the Live Desk, everybody. Ben Handelman here. Hey, if this is your first time at the Live Desk, this is the most exciting hour of television that we've got coming your way, even though it's not TV anymore. I got to get that out of my vocab because this is all digital, baby. We're on your YouTube channel. We're on your Fox Local app. And right here from the Wisconsin Live Desk, everything that's happening live comes into this room. And I've got the ability to switch to feeds from all over the Midwest, all over Wisconsin, and obviously all over the world as we're in Canada right now. We're also following the big news at this hour coming from Minnesota, where that suspect, now charged with the political assassination of a lawmaker and injured another lawmaker there in Minnesota, state lawmakers, just made his way inside the courtroom. So it's been an interesting day of charges. Vance Belter is his name. He was originally charged with state charges. They've now upped those to federal charges. And at this moment, he has just walked inside the courtroom, just seeing an update saying he is wearing an orange jumpsuit as he's inside the courtroom right now. Vance Belter, the man accused of attacking the homes of two state lawmakers, in the courtroom right now in Minneapolis. He's being escorted by U.S. Marshals, and now he's facing federal murder charges. That is significant because with the federal charges, he now is facing potentially the death penalty for these charges. And we have heard from federal investigators saying that the charges may go up in the days to come. Possible, terrorism charges could be added as well. But obviously he's facing, right now, federal murder charges. He started today by facing state second-degree murder charges, and there has been some conversations about why that is, why he would face a second-degree murder charge instead of the more serious first-degree, and part of that's a legal technicality, because in the state of Minnesota, for first-degree intentional homicide, you need to have a grand jury come forward and indict the person, so it just takes more time. So initially here in Minnesota, there were state charges in the nearby county in Hennepin County, but now the feds have taken over the case, and now he's been charged with federal murder charges. And you're looking live. Obviously, there you see a St. Paul police officer outside. There's no real crowds outside the courthouse, but a lot of media as it's all really unfolding fast. This guy was on the run for 2 days after these terrible attacks over the weekend, and now we're seeing, obviously, the result of his capture. Said it was the largest manhunt in the history of Minnesota, as they had tracked this guy, found his car kind of closer to where he lived, outside of the Twin Cities, about an hour away, tracked his car down. There was some reports that he was spotted by someone. He was actually captured on a trail camera from someone, according to reports, out kind of by his home. So they set up a perimeter, and he came crawling out of a field. He was armed, but there was no shots fired when he was arrested. And now a day later, really hours later, here he is in Minneapolis inside the court. So we've got this live picture up. We are following this right now as this is some of the breaking news that we're following here on the Live Desk. Other things we're following on the Live Desk, we had a failed rocket launch. Ooh, that wasn't the right shot. I'll get that up in a second. The Atlas, not going to be taking off today. I've got a press conference that is up and down. We're watching what's happening with the G7. We're going to be talking belly flops that happened over the weekend here on the live desk, and also Jason Calvey is going to join us in the hour ahead. So stay with us here. I got to take a quick break. When we come back, I'm going to get all these feeds set up, and we'll take just a little circle around, see what's happening here on your Monday to kick off the week. You're watching the Wisconsin Live Desk exclusively on Fox Local.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Ben Handelman here from the Wisconsin Live Desk on your Monday. Hopefully I'll be able to say my name right as the week goes on. Hey, welcome to the Live Desk, where we're watching several different live feeds right now. I'll get you out to Minneapolis right now. We continue to watch this. You can see media has gathered outside the courthouse. This is the federal courthouse in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, as the suspect for those shootings over the weekend of Minnesota state lawmakers is appearing as we speak right now in court. Vance Belter, 57 years old. They're calling this a political assassination. According to the acting United States Attorney for the District of Minnesota, there was a news conference saying that all of the officials targeted were Democrats. This guy, they found a manifesto in his car, and there were up to 70 names. Some of the lawmakers on that manifesto were lawmakers from Wisconsin. So this is all really unfolding the last couple of days. Authorities got really lucky here that the authorities, just because they had showed up to the scene of a shooting of a lawmaker in Minnesota, they thought, man, we should go and make sure Melissa Hortman, a state representative nearby, is okay. And when they got there, sure enough, according to investigators, this assassin was there, had killed State Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband, Mark. But that set into motion what's happening here, his capture, because there was an exchange of gunfire with the suspect. He ran out the back door, out onto a golf course, got away. But lawmakers and investigators out there in Minnesota are saying, well, if the law enforcement hadn't showed up, really their own intuition here, like we need to go check other state lawmakers who live nearby, they're wondering if the killings would have kept going. And obviously that did not happen. Also learning from the reporting today that this suspect, Vance Belter, is now accused of possibly stopping at two other lawmakers' houses on the day of these killings. One lawmaker reportedly was not home. Unclear if that second lawmaker was home or not, but went on to these two other houses shooting a state senator, and then the former state representative leader, Melissa Hortman, and her husband were killed at that final spot. And then everything kind of switched on Sunday to Green Isle, very close to the suspect's home address, about an hour outside of the Twin Cities. And that is when he was arrested. Hey, I've got a new press conference up. We've got all sorts of flooding in West Virginia. Let's listen into this press conference happening live here on the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Our second objective is to maintain and restore the infrastructure, not only here in the city, but also the county where we've had major damage. And finally is our preliminary damage assessment. And what this is so urgent for us is because with the assistance of the American Red Cross and Sharon here and the National Guard, we're going from house to house, determining how many houses have been destroyed, how many houses are severely damaged, and how many houses that have minor damage. As we compile this information will be given to the governor's office, and then it'll be passed on to Philadelphia, FEMA Region 3, and eventually to the president, and asking for a presidential declaration. We've had congressmen and our senators who are supporting our efforts. They've already notified the president of what's going on, and once this damage assessment is complete, that's going to be what's very important for us to get that declaration from the president. There has been some questions about what's going on with utilities. Mountaineer Gas, I believe all those leaks have been stopped and gas has been restored to all the communities affected. The electric company is still reporting 1,700 people without power, and once they get a substation restored, we think those numbers are going to go down quite quickly. The Valley Grove water supply and system, they had a leak this morning. We think it's been repaired. That is going to hold the system. They're pressurizing system. The tanks are being full, so we expect those citizens to return to normal with their water service. And of course, this weather event doesn't stop more rain from coming. So I've just talked to the National Weather Service. They're reporting today that this afternoon we do have a chance of some additional rain. They're going to continue a flood watch throughout the night, and by about 8 o'clock, what is worrisome to us is on Thursday there's chance of more severe weather. So we'll be closely watching the monitors because obviously with all the damage occurred, we have recovery efforts still going on, getting our restoration. So severe weather is going to affect all of that. So we'll be watching it very, very closely. Mr. Gamble is here. He is, tomorrow they will continue to provide tetanus shots to all the community, anybody who needs it here at the Wheeling County Health Department and also at our command post. He has a setup out there. And we've received many, many questions about FEMA. Where's FEMA? Why aren't they here? Where's the money coming from? As I explained, that's the importance of the preliminary damage assessment. We have to get those numbers, we have to get accurate numbers, and we have to get them to the president. That's when the declaration will be issued. Once we get that issued, then FEMA will come in. There's basically two services from FEMA. One is public assistance, so any damage to public works or anything within the city, first response agencies, any expenses occurred, the damages that highways is dealing with, all those expenses are going to be covered under public assistance. But also, it's just as important is individual assistance. That's the assistance that's going to be helping all the people who've lost their homes or damaged. And that's why, again, I'm emphasizing the idea that the preliminary damage assessment is so essential. And Chief Blazier will be mentioning a little bit more about the process for that. So I'm going to turn it now over to Chief Deputy Lewis for his comments.
Thanks, Lou. Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here today. We are here today under somber circumstances. As you know, our community has experienced devastating flooding over the past 2 days, which has tragically resulted in the loss of life. Before I proceed, I want to extend my deep condolences to the family, friends, and lost of the loved ones, my family, friends, and loved ones of the ones we have lost. This is an incredibly difficult time, and our thoughts and prayers are with each and every one affected by this disaster. After this time, and after thorough verification by the medical examiner, we are releasing the names of those who have tragically lost their lives in this flood. Michael Bankowskevich, 73, of Triadelphia, West Virginia. Travis Creighton, 19, of Triadelphia, West Virginia. Kaylee Mitch Shawton, 26, of Triadelphia, along with her 3-year-old daughter, Parker Shawton. Lisa McMasters, 59, of Triadelphia, West Virginia. And Michael Vernos, 74, of Moundsville. We ask you for your respect and compassion for these families so they can grieve. Out of respect for their privacy, no further details will be released at this time in regards to them. As Mr. Vargo alluded to, we still have, I believe, 2 people still unaccounted for that we are actively searching for. The Ohio County Sheriff's Office is the lead investigatory agency regarding these fatalities. And to my knowledge, this is the largest mass casualty event we've had in Ohio County. Thank you.
Good afternoon. The recovery efforts along the Wheeling Creek are continuing. We started yesterday morning with systematic approach as far as searching homes that were impaired or destroyed to assure that there was no one inside, and then moving along, and some of this was going on simultaneously, and that was searching the creek banks and any vehicles that were able to be accessed that were above the water. We cleared most of those yesterday. One of the things that we did find in some of the homes were that we had some pets that folks probably left behind for their safety, and it worked. And we have those pets in the custody of the local animal shelters for safety. So if you did have a pet that's misplaced, check with one of the animal shelters to see if that's a possibility. Today we are concentrating on removing in excess of 20 vehicles and some other debris from the creeks. We're clearing those vehicles, looking for, make sure they were not occupied. Also, this is a twofold thing. One, to search for any missing persons that may be in these vehicles, as well as not allowing a damming effect that would happen at these bridge collection points. In case we get more rain, this will allow a freer flow of the water, lessening the impact of possibly future flooding. We've brought this up in our press conferences so far, and that is, if you have no reason to be in these areas, please avoid them. If you are a resident, by all means, you are welcome to go in. But if you are going out just to see what the damage is, please stay away. Recovery efforts are underway. Also, cleanup efforts are underway, and the amount of traffic that's involved is impeding those efforts. So if we could please avoid going and driving through these areas, it will expedite the success of this mission. Lou spoke a little bit about the damage assessment. So one of the first steps to get the ball rolling for assistance to our area is to fill out a disaster survey, and by doing this, this establishes the need for our location. And this will move that relief process forward to the federal level. As currently we have less than 100 people that have filled out the survey, and we are encouraging anyone that is affected by this flooding to please fill out the survey so that we can get your numbers counted and move us on to the next level. The website for that is emd.wv.gov/disaster survey. And we will post that on the website so that we can, if anybody needs it, they can access that site and use and get their survey in. I think that's all I have.
Thank you, Chief. On behalf of the men and women of the Wheeling Police Department and all of the agencies represented at the Emergency Operations Center, our heartfelt condolences to the tragic loss of 6 lives. all Ohio or Marshall County residents. Also, I want to extend our heartfelt appreciation to the first responders who for the last 48 hours essentially have continued to risk their lives in the interest of others. And finally, to all of the overwhelming response from citizens from throughout this Ohio Valley and the state of West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and Ohio for reaching out to provide assistance, which is much needed. So thank you there. I'm going to first cover road closures. First with an update. Within the last 30 minutes, Schilling Bridge has opened per the Department of Highways. But in the city of Wheeling, we still have road closures on Warden Run. And by the way, this is all part of your packets. Lumber Avenue, city of Wheeling, remains closed. US 40 National Road from Triadelphia to Valley Grove in Ohio County, closed. GC&P Road, both in the city of Wheeling and Ohio County, closed. Middle Creek Road, Ohio County, closed. Peters Run Road, Ohio County, closed. Dixon Run Road, Ohio County, closed. Short Creek Road in Ohio County, closed. McGraw's Run Road in Ohio County, closed. Atkinson Crossing in Ohio County, closed. Battle Run Road in Ohio County, closed. And finally, Point Run Road in Ohio County, closed. I mentioned the overwhelming response of people wanting to help. That is absolutely tremendous, and it's a part of who we are. However, having said that, there are some problems that come along with that. When you have self-reporting, when you have folks that are going on their own mission, when we're trying to organize a response, a coordinated response, it does have some adverse impacts. The traffic in Elm Grove has been fairly abysmal. The sightseeing is a large part of that. So I want to touch on a couple examples of how the sightseeing adversely impacts both recovery and cleanup. This morning we received a request to respond to the Elm Grove District of Wheeling for cleanup. We had city operations and the Department of Highways prepared and on the way to clean that stretch of roadway, which is desperately needed. Police officers were called there to clear the roadway, which was done.
Ben Haleman here from the Wisconsin Live Desk. Okay, so we're watching this press conference here on your screen. Terrible flash flooding in West Virginia. This is Wheeling, West Virginia, northern part of the state, right on the border with Pennsylvania, kind of if you're in between Pittsburgh and Columbus. That's where this flash flooding occurred. 6 people were killed yesterday when the rains came down in one of the creeks in a place called Triadelphia, which is just outside of Wheeling. It just became a raging river and sucked up cars, and we're learning the victims' ages now, anywhere between the ages of 73 and 3 years old. So, and 6 people dead, 2 people still missing, and it's unclear if those people are not in the area or whatnot. They're trying to figure out what happened to the 2 people who are unaccounted for at this time. So 6 people dead in West Virginia. You're hearing officials, they're now having a coordinated response, trying to get all of the local officials on board, and they are going to ask for an emergency declaration from the president. I've got just a quick update what's going on in Minnesota, too. I'm going to hit you up. The camera's gone a little darker there as we're in the shadows here, but Vance Belter, the suspect in the terrible assassinations of political members, according to investigators over the weekend, just made his first court appearance, lasted about 12 minutes. Reporters describe him as being stern. This was in the federal courthouse, so we do not have cameras inside the courthouse, but we are starting to get reaction of what happened in there. He told the judge he could not afford an attorney, and so the judge has appointed a federal public defender for him at this time as he makes that first court appearance after one state lawmaker and her husband were killed over the weekend, and another was shot, as well as that person's spouse. So that's the latest from Minnesota as we're following all of this right now here on the Wisconsin live desk. We're also following the weather a little bit. This is the first summer day for a lot of kids, weekday, Monday, as school got out last week for most kids in Wisconsin, and they're all trying to enjoy something. So it's just we got our eye on the radar. There have been storms out to the west, but they've been fizzling as they move into southeast Wisconsin, and that is good news for all the kids who want to do something outside today, as the heat is back, 70s by the lake, but 80s inland. And when we return here on the Wisconsin Live Desk, we have a very special guest will be joining us. Noah's Ark will be here, as they had a pretty wacky contest over the weekend. We're going to talk to him about that, and we're going to talk to him about all of the new things that you can do at Noah's Ark and in the Dells this summer. So stay with us right here on the Wisconsin Live Desk as we continue to follow all the feeds coming in. We'll have this interview coming up right after the break.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Ben Handelman here from the Wisconsin Live Desk. We've just hit the 2 o'clock mark on your Monday as we're following all of the live feeds that are coming in, and we'll keep on top of that for you. It's also kind of a big day if you're a kid, because normally you'd have to wake up on a Monday, you'd probably be feeling tired, and you'd have to run off to school. Not on this Monday, because summer is out. All schools pretty much getting out last week. We're watching the radar a little bit out there, as we did have some rain that's been moving through the Madison area. But look, as it gets in the Waukesha, it starts to fizzle. It's kept it pretty dry out here, and it's been a nice warm day. I had a little girl walk up to me and say, "I'm going to the pool today. I'm going to go jump off the diving board." And that's a perfect thing to do, and sets up our next guest here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. I want to bring in Kristen Turnquist from Noah's Ark, the Director of Marketing out there. Thanks for joining us here on the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Of course. Thanks for having me here today.
I got to ask you about what happened out there yesterday, because you guys had a big event for Father's Day that is some of the funniest video that I've seen in a while. So what did you guys do for Father's Day?
Of course. So how we celebrate our dads over here at Noah's Ark Water Park is with our Father's Day flop. This was our 7th annual Father's Day flop, and basically it's a big belly flop contest. So it takes place at Big Kahuna Wave Pool. The dads, sign up, they get in line and jump and show off their best flops.
Oh.
That was the winner right there, actually. And then there's awesome prizes. We have, different specials going on, and it's a unique event, and it's a lot of fun. We're proud to host it.
I've just seen some of the size on these guys. The circumference matter, because I think we've got the winner right here. And this is a big guy who had a big belly flop.
He loved his belly flop. He was excellent, and the judges saw that. So, you know, we talked about what the judges were looking for. So they had an idea. They were looking for, you know, a big splash, going, you know, pushing out far, and a loud smack. Some of them were thinking of. So, you know, we like them to get creative and see what they can come up with.
I love it. I love that you guys do this out there and have this big event. Obviously, this is now a bonkers time of year for you guys out in the Dells, because now we're going to turn the waves back on the wave pool as the crowds are starting to come out to you guys.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yep, we cannot wait to have people come on out here, to continue to come on out here. We have some great specials going on, especially even for our Wisconsin residents, with tickets for only $29.99. So, you know, come on out to the park. There's so much new stuff going on, and we put on great events. So
I know there's always something new at Noah's Ark, and there's always something that draws people, even if you've been there a million times. What's new this year?
So the big things that are new this year is that we added 2.5 million gallons of heated water to our pools, which is great, especially right now when, you know, on cooler days, you don't have to worry about it when the water's nice and warm. So we added 2.5 million gallons of heated water. We also revamped Tadpole Bay, which is our popular children's water play structure. It has a huge dump bucket, like 500 gallons of water.
Wow.
That's been fully revamped, refreshed, and we have a new restaurant, Splashdown Grill, serving all, you know, your grilled summer favorites.
I Noah's Ark, it always impresses me how many visitors you guys get a year, and you really get visitors from all around the country.
We do, yeah, because it's, you know, kind of crazy. We have season passes where guests can come for unlimited visits, and, you know, they're from all over. They're not just from Wisconsin. They're from Florida. They're from Canada. They're all over. So, you know, we just love welcoming our visitors to America's largest water park.
I can't remember the last time I did a belly flop, but just watching this video, like of the winner, like that guy definitely deserved to win, because it was a perfectly flat. I mean, that's the key, right?
That's the key. That's the key. Some will even try to go right by the judges to get them, you know, wet. So it's all, feel the splash.
More of a cannonball. All right, let's talk about the prizes before we let you go, because there were some pretty sweet prizes out there that you guys dished out. What did the winner get? And do you remember where he was from?
I don't remember where he was from, but we did have the largest prizes that we have. We have our bubbler paddleboard. We had a carbless lounging chair, a Kona beach wagon. There were some, of course, prizes for dads. Like there was a smart meat thermometer. There was, you know, water bottles, Malibu Jenga, lots of different prizes. And then, of course, we had awards. You can see that nice big trophy there for the winner, and then we had medals as well for second and third place.
I think I'll pull this picture back up, but he looks so happy and look how his daughter is now holding that giant trophy.
I'm telling you, it's an honor, the Red Valley Badge of Honor. So loved it.
He'll have to come back next year and try and keep the crown, because what a fun event out there. Kristen, thanks for coming here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. Thanks for holding such fun events. And I know you're a little bit warmer than we are here in Milwaukee, right along the lake, and that's just how you guys like it, nice and hot.
Nice and hot. It's, you know, that's when you want to go to a water park. So we got you covered.
Thanks for joining us here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Kristen Turnquist, making me wonder if I should practice my belly flops as the summer gets going. Okay, that was fun. And stay with us here on the Wisconsin Live Desk, because I'm just seeing some new feeds that are popping up here. So we'll get you back to those in a second. Who knows where we'll
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Ben Haleman from the Wisconsin Live Desk. I'm seeing on one of my feeds we got a reporter out in Minneapolis who's giving an update to her station what's going on inside that federal courthouse. Let's just listen in and we'll dip in and see if we can understand what happened there in court. Okay, I'm not seeing any audio on my feed here, so we'll have to keep watching this channel as we don't have that routed to the audio. Here's another shot from Minneapolis. I could tell you the latest updates. So Vance Belter, that's the suspect accused of assassinating a Minnesota state lawmaker and also killing her husband, made his way into court. He's also accused of shooting another state lawmaker and injuring that person's wife, is now facing federal murder charges, which could allow for the death penalty. Vance Belter, 57 years old, had a private security firm in the area, although according to reports, didn't sound like a very successful one, telling the judge in court that he worked a part-time job, maybe made $500 a week, says he could not afford a lawyer when he was in there. He did not make a plea. One of the judge inside that courtroom, inside this federal courthouse, appointed a lawyer to him. So this was a very brief court hearing. According to the reporters who are inside this federal courthouse, and again, this is federal court, so we can't have our cameras inside. Very different than state court, which often does allow cameras in the courtroom. That is not allowed in federal court. So we don't have any images right now of what happened, but according to the reporters inside, Vance Belter had a very stern look on his face throughout this very short court proceeding and said very little, basically did not make a plea and then said he couldn't afford a lawyer. So they've now moved it on. I'm just reading some of the updates here. The question whether he will be held without bail expected to be settled at a hearing scheduled June 27th. So that could be his next time in court. We're also learning that this suspect may have visited other lawmakers' homes before the shootings. There could have been more victims had they been home. One state senator, a Democrat from suburban Minneapolis, saying she was told the shooting suspect was parked near her home early Saturday morning. Prosecutors say Monday the suspect had visited homes of at least two lawmakers who were not shot after he attacked the two others. So apologies on my end. He actually stopped by the lawmakers' homes after those shootings. Again, he was on the run because after, according to investigators at least, they said once he shot that state lawmaker who was a former leader of the House in Minnesota, lawmakers were there was an exchange of gunfire, and he had to run out the back. So that's kind of the latest. Let's see if I got this reporter on 4.
Partisan board at the state level.
Yeah, let's listen in here. This is a reporter from Minneapolis.
Speaking with his roommate, it looks like he worked in food services at some point for a company in Bloomington. Also worked perhaps for a morgue or funeral home company at some point. So unclear what that part-time job is that he was referring to. But the roommate said that when he did get those part-time jobs here in the Minneapolis area, he stayed at that home in North Minneapolis. So a financial picture, $540 a week, and he reportedly has 5 children. That's, not a ton of money. The roommate did indicate that he was dealing with some financial stress at the time and that his mood had sort of shifted. So getting definitely a little bit more color to the picture of what was going on in his life before the shooting.
Okay, so that's a Minnesota reporter that we've been listening to out there a Minneapolis reporter, talking about what she's learned about after speaking with the roommate. So this guy, allegedly, he lived about an hour outside of the city, but had a room that he was renting inside the Twin Cities, kind of that he would stay at with a roommate. For many, many years, the roommate was talking about what he knew. I want to bring in my colleague, Jason Calvi, who's in the newsroom, because he's been following up on kind of the political unrest that our country is facing. This guy also has Wisconsin ties. So, Jason, thanks for being here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. I know you've been kind of working a different angle of this story. What have you been working on today?
Yeah, Ben, so thanks for having me on again. Appreciate it. We're looking at what Wisconsin's doing to protect lawmakers. And, we went to an event today. There was a state senator and a state representative who had planned to talk to the media beforehand. They shut that down. They said, we're not taking any questions before this event because they were told by their leadership to not talk to the media about what happened in Minnesota. There's still a lot of worry and fear among state lawmakers after we saw what happened in our neighboring state of Minnesota. I can tell you that at this event that happened in one of the suburbs, it's still going on right now, so I'll just hold that information as far as what city we're talking about, but it was one of the suburban cities, and I can tell you I saw a marked police car outside of that event today. One of the communications people for the state senator that was there said that they were there in light of what happened in Minnesota. So we're seeing people ramp up security around state lawmakers, and saw the police guarding this particular event in one of the suburban areas. And I can tell you that the Speaker of the Wisconsin Assembly, Robin Vos, he's now asking for increased security for their next session, which is going to be just in 2 days on Wednesday. The State Assembly will be gaveling in for business of the state, passing and debating bills, and he's asking for additional security to guard them when they gavel in on Wednesday.
We've seen some instant changes from other states as well, because some lawmakers around the country, not hard to find where they live. I mean, they put their address many times right on the website. I'm not sure in Wisconsin if that's the case, their voting address, but I know like North Dakota, they're scrubbing all the addresses off of the web. I don't know if we've seen changes yet in Wisconsin like that.
We have been seeing some of those. There's even debate going on in Wisconsin right now if all those addresses should be shielded. Right now, Wisconsin shields judges' addresses. You may remember this was a story that Ashley Sears and our team covered back in 2022, where you had that judge, a retired judge in Juneau County. His name is John Romer, and he was a Wisconsin judge, but many years earlier he had sentenced somebody to prison for a burglary case. In 2001 was the burglary case, and then that, according to prosecutors, they allege that that man actually went and shot and killed the judge in Juneau County back in 2022. So that led to discussions at the state level about protecting and shielding judges' addresses. And now it is state law. In 2024, the Wisconsin Assembly, Wisconsin Senate, and the governor passed and approved a bill that shields judges' addresses. And so you can't, you're not supposed to be able to find where the judges live, and that's a new state law as of 2024. The question now is, should state lawmakers be added to that? Your state representative, your state senator, should those addresses, their voting address, should that be shielded from sharing with the public? And that is a question that's going to be playing out in Madison over the coming days, as really they're responding to the shocking news in our neighboring state of Minnesota. So right now, not the law to shield the state representative, state senators' addresses, but definitely discussion about that. I know State Senator Van Wangard was one of the sponsors of the bill to shield the judges passed in 2024, and he says, there's a quote here, I'll just read from it if you don't mind, Ben.
Yeah.
We don't yet have all the facts related to the inexcusable events in Minnesota. Making knee-jerk reactions and drafting legislation in response to a situation when you don't have all the facts never leads to good policy. So sort of a wait-and-see approach from one of those leading Republicans in the state Senate as far as whether or not the home addresses of our state lawmakers should be shielded. We did a story back in 2023 regarding metal detectors at the state capitol. You may remember a man was accused of going into the state capitol with a gun. He said he was looking to speak with the governor, and that man did face charges. And so at that point, there was a big discussion in Wisconsin, should we start having metal detectors at the many, many doors of the state capitol? If you've ever visited the state capitol, as you have been, there's doors around that whole perimeter, public access where you can go in, there's no metal detectors. And at the time, it was really interesting because we asked the governor, we asked Republican leadership, should you now install metal detectors? And both the governor and Republican leaders said no.
Yeah, and if you go into the Capitol and you try, okay, you can get into the Capitol, but you go and try and talk to the governor, there is security before you get up into the governor's office. But yeah, and I was once a reporter in Illinois, and they went through this exact same issue. They had a fatal shooting inside the Capitol, and they ended up adding security because of that fatal shooting in the Illinois State House down there in Springfield. So obviously this is not a Wisconsin alone problem. And Jason, even, I mean, you were talking some of the issues with the judge who was shot here in Wisconsin, but this is not a Wisconsin problem. This is really across the country. We've seen political violence seems to be on the rise, obviously with the assassination attempts on the president. We've had senators shot and House speakers all in the last several years. So, I mean, and it really goes against exactly what lawmakers are about, which is speaking to people, you know, not talking in front of cameras. That's
right.
Not what we're used to when it comes to lawmakers. Sometimes they want to get out in front and talk to constituents and happy to shake hands, especially at the coffee store. But it's one thing to talk to someone out and about, and it's another when someone who's angry shows up on your doorstep.
Right, and you know, you mentioned the past history of political violence in the country, and we think about Gabby Giffords, the Democratic congresswoman in Arizona who was shot at one of her events. We had Steve Scalise, Republican, who was shot at that congressional baseball practice where they were practicing for the congressional baseball. That happened on the same exact date. I believe June 14th of 2017. So, and then of course you mentioned the assassination attempts against President Trump this summer. So, you know, this is something that we've had violence on both sides of the political spectrum, targeting elected officials.
And not really easy solutions, because if you're like, well, geez, just get security for everybody, 24-hour, 365-day security is just bonkers expensive, almost undoable for state budgets that are so thin to begin with. So even when they're coming up with solutions here, Jason, there's not a lot of easy answers.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, you're talking about it in the state, you know, the state legislature, you would talk about, you know, hundreds, how are you going to protect hundreds of members of the state legislature? How are you going to protect hundreds of members of Congress and the senators? It's a big question. It's been asked before, as we mentioned those incidences in the past where there's been political violence against elected leaders. There's been questions about how exactly are we going to protect our elected leaders so they can do the job of democracy. They can cast their votes, but not have to worry about the threat at the door, literally at their home, coming to their homes.
Right, and there's even been debate on the local levels, like the Milwaukee mayor has protection from an officer from the Milwaukee Police Department, but there's a cost associated with all of that, and that has been discussed in the past, even on these local levels. Well, geez, how much security does he really need? And then it ebbs and flows to, well, how much more security should he get, you know, depending on what's happening in their political environment, it seems.
Yeah, that's exactly the question, and so it's really very, very early in this discussion, and as the Assembly comes back into session, there's a hearing tomorrow on Tuesday for the budget. That'll be the Senate and the representatives having that hearing on the budget tomorrow. Then they'll be in session on Wednesday. I think these questions that we're asking, that you're asking me, and then I'm asking as well, I think those are going to continue to be fleshed out. Right now, it's just, again, that shock, the morning of the loss in Minnesota, and then trying to figure out what are the next steps, but it's still very early in that process of figuring out the next steps because they're still waiting in many ways to find out exactly what happened in Minnesota.
Well, and also, I mean, they allegedly found this guy's manifesto, and according to some reports that are out there, there were several Wisconsin lawmakers on that list, and that would make them more heightenedly alert of what you were talking about. Hey, we don't want to talk to anyone until about Minnesota. I mean, they may be part of the investigation here.
That's right. Part of the investigation, I mean, figuring out this person's motives and figuring out exactly what led him to do the unthinkable, the unconscionable, with attacking and killing the Speaker Emerita in Minnesota. So lots of big questions going on right now. And, you know, you mentioned that list. We're not sharing which Wisconsin lawmakers would have been on that list if they don't decide to share that publicly for their own safety, because they don't have the benefit of armed security guarding them 24/7 in many, many ways. But I can tell you that Senator Baldwin did come out publicly and say that she was indeed on that list of Wisconsin lawmakers that were on a list. This is what Senator Baldwin's spokesman, Eli Rosen, said. I'll just go ahead and read if you don't mind, Ben. Senator Baldwin was informed by law enforcement that she was included on the alleged shooter's list of names. She is grateful for law enforcement's swift action to keep the community safe and remains focused on the things that matter most here, honoring the legacy and life of Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband, Mark, praying for the other victims who are fighting for their lives, and condemning this abhorrent, senseless political violence.
You just think all the Democrats were gathered this weekend in one spot at the Wisconsin Dells. I know security was heightened there, but Senator Baldwin was one of the big speakers. Tony Evers was there as well. I mean, basically all the big Democrats were all in one spot when this search was happening. The guy wasn't even in custody. So it was a scary weekend for sure. I know a lot of nerves have come down a little bit now that there's been arrests and charges today, but we appreciate your reporting here on the live desk. We look forward to your reports today of 4, 5, 6, 9, and 10 on Fox 6.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me on anytime.
Jason Calby reporting here on the live desk. Thanks, Jason. All right, we got to take a quick break here. Stay with us. Our show's coming quickly to a close here, but we'll take one look around. Also, all the feeds that are coming in. So stay with us. You're watching the Wisconsin Live Desk here exclusively on Fox.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Ben Haleman from the Wisconsin Live Desk. Well, we have a proclamation from the governor, and I think we should get to it because I think it's an important one. This coming from the office of the governor, proclaiming today Quick Trip Day. The beloved Wisconsin gas station chain is celebrating their 60th anniversary, and to honor them, the governor has proclaimed the day Quick Trip Day. Quick Trip even celebrating by announcing, "It's my birthday!" That's, I think, how I read it. They had several different exclamation points. Their Twitter is usually on fire, their X account. So the governor, going very governor-ish with his proclamation, saying, whether it's their high-quality fuel, ready-to-eat food, iconic Glazer's donuts, or one of my favorites, the Blueberry Dunker donuts, Quick Trip is a staple for Wisconsinites and folks across the Midwest. Since its founding, Quick Trip has set the standard for world-class customer service, and I'm glad to be able to help celebrate this Wisconsin institution. Happy birthday, Quick Trip, and here's to many more years of service and success. Signed, Tony Evers, Governor of Wisconsin. I was talking to someone about they were new to Wisconsin, and they were trying to understand why is Quick Trip such a big deal. And I said, basically, it all comes down to they have clean bathrooms. As a reporter, especially when I was out in the field, that's basically all it comes down to. You're looking for that clean bathroom. you know at Quick Trip you'll find it. But then you have all sorts of other stuff too. And as actually it's created our question of the day here on Quick Trip Day. They have all the food inside. That's great. But it makes us wonder, what is your favorite thing about Quick Trip? Is it the Glazers? Oh, those are so good. Is it the hot food, like the little chicken sandwiches? The clean bathrooms that I was just talking about? When you're out on the road in the middle of nowhere and you don't want to walk into something you'll regret, you can find the Quick Trip. The bananas, and they always got those cheap bananas. Not a lot of coffee drinkers so far. Or is it just everything? You just love everything about Quick Trip. I do love Quick Trip, and I'm very happy. They've been around for 60 years out in western Wisconsin, but they're expanding all around the nation now. They're going to get some competition, though, as we're getting that Buc-ee's possibly down there in Oak Creek, so we'll see what happens with that. Okay, so that's been the latest adventure here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. We had a lot of things, especially out of Minneapolis today. We're still following the G7 Summit. You can follow all the stories. Great to have on a belly flop competition from Noah's Ark in the Dells. Anything else I missed? I don't know. Follow all the stories here on fox6now.com and your Fox local app, and we'll keep you updated. Thanks for joining us.
Dog sniffing with officers there. But this is what it looks like right now inside the state capitol.
Okay, and if we do have a chance in the next 15 minutes or so, I know we've been talking a little bit about one of their neighbors who was close with Mark Hortman, and he was able to shed a little light on who Mark was as well. So if we have an opportunity to pull that, I don't know if we had sound this morning or if, I can't remember if Kelly or Tom were just talking about it, but
Let me see, I'll do a little digging.
I think Leon did the interview with him yesterday, if I remember right. So if that's something that our newsroom can help us out with, we'd love to be able to share that as well, as we want to honor the two people who have passed, which is both Melissa Hortman and Mark Hortman as well.
I do have that sound from a visitor at the memorial now, Amy. So, Danny, that's page A32.3 when you are able.
Comment in just a second.
I work in the legislature. I just finished my first session as a Senate staffer.